Governor's Log, Telnari Agricultural Outpost, Week 3 of SHAR Disruption Event Classification, internal use only, not for public archive submission. This morning marked the 21st standard day under interdiction. As of 0600, all outbound comms remain jammed, including fleet-level emergency bands. Secondary beacon redundancy failed last week. We attempted a tethered burst relay via the orbital survey platform. The SHAR fried it within an hour. Current colonial population, 1,287. Operational water reclamation systems, 1 out of 5. Filtration output, 42% decreasing. Reservoirs, below minimum viability in 4 sectors. We've entered ration status for all non-agricultural use. Irrigation prioritization matrix has been reweighted. The children are taking short turns monitoring condenser runoff. I've personally verified we're down to powdered meal packs in most dispensaries. No fresh produce, no cold storage. We've lost the greenhouse dome. It cracked during last week's wind burst when the dome anchor servos seized and the secondary seals didn't deploy. The agricultural drone swarms have gone haywire, flying crooked loops over dry soil, reporting crop patterns that haven't existed since the spring cycle. Without full sync to the ComNet, they default to old command scripts. I've sent technicians to hard-code new behavior patterns, but they're limited by the heat and no access to internal cooling on the tool banks. The school access terminal has gone offline entirely. The backup server now only displays a blinking prompt and a corrupted voice module that loops, "I'm still learning," in a stuttering tone. 2 students cried. One attempted to fix it with a spoon. The spoon is now lodged in the rear cooling intake. I've filed 8 requests to GC Command. 6 via beacon before jamming. 2 hand-carried by low-orbit courier before SHAR orbital presence cut all launches. Every single response has been identical. Your transmission has been received. Due to current strategic restraint policy review, immediate intervention is not possible. Please maintain population control and system integrity until status shift. Stay safe. Stay loyal. Stay loyal. To whom, precisely? The SHAR already know we exist. The fleet isn't coming. Command seems more worried about diplomatic entanglement than colonial survival, and the field medics are using sterilized plumbing mesh to build IV frames. I'd like to say morale is stable. It isn't. People are scared, and fear turns to blame faster than heat cracks glass. We were preparing for long siege protocol, drawing up rotation schedules, repurposing airlocks into storage chambers, transferring gray water from the scrubbers to emergency filtration tanks. I had just reviewed the 10th iteration of the non-alarmist public address script when the alert siren started blaring. Unscheduled orbital contact. Everyone assumed it was SHAR. I started preparing a civilian lockdown order, assuming this was an escalation, perhaps a warning shot, perhaps worse. Instead, a single ship broke orbit. Short-range profile, low EM signature, and what looked suspiciously like hull plates from 3 different decades. It didn't respond to hails. It broadcast no IFF signature, no diplomatic credentials, no command flag. Our internal defense coordinator flagged it as an unregistered vessel and ordered a passive scan. The power signature was oddly high for a ship of that size, but unstable, clearly modded. Then it fired. Not at us. The projectile, a blunt, low-orbit slug built from what we later identified as a pressure tank, thermal coil array, and what might have been half a cafeteria oven, launched from the skiff's dorsal array with no warning. We watched it ascend in a lazy arc toward the upper sky. Defense thought it was a threat, maybe a targeting error, maybe a warning. Then the SHAR relay satellite blinked out of existence in a quiet, unregistered thermal bloom. It was vaporized. No countermeasure. No detonation warning. Just gone. The residual signal was a scatter of spinning debris, none of it larger than a fist. SHAR orbital presence vanished from our scans within 2 hours. The skiff didn't gloat. It didn't request confirmation. It didn't transmit at all. It just drifted through the atmosphere like it had nowhere better to be, looped twice over the valley, then descended gently into the irrigation flats behind the northern ridge. No permit, no landing approval, no clearance tags. It touched down like someone returning to a favorite lunch spot. We sent out a containment unit, standard civilian response. By the time the responders arrived, the Terran crew had already deployed 2 portable solar rigs, laid out a toolkit across the gravel, and removed the access grates from the water reclamation trench. According to our environmental officer, they had identified the filter collapse issue within 7 minutes. Within 20, they were inside the main tank, up to their elbows in high-sediment biofilm, muttering something about fixing what the last genius forgot to bolt. No introductions. No identification. They just gotta work. I drafted a formal censure, a regulation breach notice, a chain of command violation, illegal contact, unauthorized orbital weapons use. All of it. I never filed it. Because the humans were fixing the water system faster than we could even diagnose it. Because we needed help, and because no one else was coming. By sunset, they had flushed the system, bypassed the primary circuit board with what looked like a reinforced lunch tray, and were directing water through auxiliary lines that hadn't been used in years. The pressure stabilized. The flow rate doubled. The children stopped crying. They didn't ask for food or lodging. They slept under their ship, eating out of resealed ration pouches, laughing at something one of them called classic toast failure protocol. They didn't say who they were. They didn't have to. They stayed for 3 days. They never asked for permission, never presented credentials, never explained why they were here or who had sent them, or if anyone had sent them at all. From the moment their skiff touched down, it was simply understood that they had arrived to fix things. And that was enough. Within the first 6 hours, they had the main filtration matrix disassembled, cleared, rerouted, and pressure tested. The system, which hadn't functioned properly in almost 7 weeks, stabilized to 94% efficiency. Our colony maintenance log still lists that number in red because it exceeds what the unit was originally rated for. One of the human engineers, a lanky man in a scorched jumpsuit whose name I never got, emerged from the maintenance trench holding a dislodged valve in one hand and a half-melted GC standard coupler in the other. He dropped both onto the ground, wiped his hands with something that looked like a decommissioned t-shirt, and said, "You lot ever try replacing this with literally anything else?" He was right. They did. They used a Terran alloy pipe section, a pressure lock from their own landing gear, and a high-temp food processor valve. The result ran smoother than any part of the GC original spec. I watched them work from my office for most of that first night. They moved quickly without hierarchy. No one barked orders. No one checked forms. They seemed to know intuitively who was best suited for each task, not through title or command rank, but through some shared rhythm of urgency and purpose. At dawn, they moved on to the drone systems. We'd written off the agricultural drones 3 weeks ago. Our techs couldn't access the damaged central uplink, and the GC backup firmware kept reverting to legacy behaviors that hadn't been patched since the last planetary recall cycle. The Terrans plugged a cable directly into the uplink access port, muttered something about firmware arrogance, and pushed an unauthorized compatibility patch into the drone's legacy OS. They called it Farmer's Friend 2.3. I don't know what the original protocol was for, but it worked. The drones stopped flying in circles. They began scanning soil again. One of them, 22A if I recall, performed a perfect topsoil moisture loop over Quadrant 6. Our agricultural chief was in tears. The second night they turned their attention to the school. No one had asked them to. No one told them the education terminal had failed. But one of the crew, the only woman among them, with calloused fingers and welding goggles perched permanently on her head, noticed the kids gathered outside the building with nothing to do. She went inside. An hour later, the lights flickered back on. The terminal booted up to a clean home screen, complete with voice interface. The voice now spoke in dry, clipped tones and frequently made snide remarks. The children named it Dave. When I asked her about the voice personality, the engineer just shrugged and said, "Better than silence." On the final day, one of the colonists' children handed the crew a hand-drawn sketch of their ship. A shaky outline of the hull, 2 blobby thruster pods, and a big, beaming smile across the nose cone. The Terrans didn't laugh. The engineer took the picture, pulled a sealing putty strip from her pocket, and affixed the drawing to the side of the skiff. No ceremony, no fuss, just a moment of quiet acknowledgement. Behind the scenes, my counsel began drafting a formal report. None of us wanted to, but protocol required it. Unauthorized contact, unregistered weapons deployment, fleet zone interference. All violations, all grounds for inquiry. But no one filed it. Not because we were afraid, but because we knew what would happen. It would be buried, rewritten, sanitized until it said nothing. And the people who'd actually saved this colony would become a footnote, or worse, a redacted incident. That night, the Terrans loaded up what little gear they'd used. They left behind a sealed crate of rations with, "in case of bullshit," scrawled across the top in permanent marker. Inside were nutrient packs, a tiny solar cooker, 3 bottles of water purifiers, and a note that read simply, "You might need this before help arrives." They also left a handwritten checklist on our utility cabinet, things you might want to fix next time. The first item read, "Central fuse housing by Junction 9 is trying to kill you. Might want to check that." Before they departed, I made a decision. I brought them the chicken. Not just any chicken, our chicken. The colony's unofficial mascot. Old, cantankerous, and revered for her legendary escape attempts. The children called her Admiral Peck. They didn't know what to say. The crew captain blinked, took the crate, and said, "We don't usually do poultry, but okay." We watched them board. The ship rose into the pale morning sky without flourish or sound beyond the hum of repurposed thrusters. As it crossed the tree line, our comm relay, still technically jammed, picked up a final message through the static. "Good eggs. Might come back." We haven't heard from them since. I never put any of this into the formal record. It's not on the GC files. It's not in the Colonial Preservation Archive. The incident is officially marked resolved, conditions stabilized, no further action required. But here's what I know. We needed help. The humans showed up. No codes, no delay, just a toolbox and a bad attitude. And somehow it worked. If you enjoy my stories set in the GC universe, you can now buy Tales from the GC Volume 1 in Kindle and paperback format off Amazon. It would mean the world to me if I sold a few copies, or even if you just flick through 1 or 2 of the stories on your Kindle Unlimited subscription. The links can be found in the description below. Thank you. The next GC story will be out soon.